Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and after all the chaos in the Formula 1 world over the last 48 hours, the FIA have officially backed down from their position of the investigation into Toto and Susie Wolff's potential compliance violations. There were rumours going around today that Ben Sulayem himself had mandated this investigation because of friction with Toto Wolff trying to get back at him behind the scenes in what looked like a bit of a personal vendetta. This has now come to a conclusion. Does this mean that the FIA and the Formula 1 guys are now on good terms? Absolutely not. Could there still be a breakaway in the future? Most certainly yes. Could Ben Sulayem still pay for this with his job? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. So if you guys have missed all the drama over the last few days, initially there was a report that came out that implied apparently multiple team principals had said to Ben Sulayem and the FIA themselves, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is the president of the FIA, just to make that very clear indeed, that they were concerned about Toto Wolff's position at Mercedes, obviously owner over there, co-owner and team principal of the team, and his wife Susie Wolff's involvement with the Formula 1 Academy over at the Formula 1 management side. As a result, it seemed, of this article, the FIA revealed they were going to investigate these potential compliance violations before we then had very swift responses from the Formula 1 management group themselves and all of the Formula 1 teams saying no, they had nothing to do with this investigation into the conflict of interest. Supposedly, they had not made any complaint about it, and therefore basically saying, even Christian Horner, of course, with his history with Toto, said that yeah, it wasn't us. We didn't raise any complaint. So then the question was, well, who exactly did and why did this occur? So this comes at a time when the relationship between Formula 1 and Mohammed Ben Sulayem and the FIA is at effectively an all-time low, really. To such a degree that for the first time, really, since the FISA-FOCA war of 2009, 2010, stuff like that, that there's considerations to break away from Formula 1, well, from Formula 1 to break away from the FIA and effectively do things themselves. A number of sources are looking into this and considering it if Ben Sulayem acts in a detrimental way for too much longer. So I think, based on all the statements yesterday, this is an attempt to get Ben Sulayem out of his position and just in the struggle for the power, really, between the two respective parties. Even as so far as to say that Mercedes senior figures believed that this Toto Susie investigation fell into a wider context of friction between Toto and the FIA and Ben Sulayem. So the rumour is that because apparently no team principal said anything, if we want to believe what the teams have said in their statements, that the situation here was started by Ben Sulayem and the FIA themselves to, as what looks like, at least according to these senior figures apparently, some degree of personal vendetta. Ben Sulayem has not appreciated Toto Wolff's interventions in recent months on a number of key F1 matters, both publicly and in private. So we know about a few of the public ones, of course, the Andretti thing, the teams are against it, the FIA is for it. Ben Sulayem's also said other things on the value of the sport. Plenty of things that Wolff and the other team principals really not so happy with, but it feels like maybe to such a degree that Ben Sulayem especially doesn't like Toto. That's how this reads, and therefore the implication is by the teams that this is a not exactly personal, but maybe it is personal, or Ben Sulayem's immediate team have done this investigation or even spread these rumours, who knows, in order to somehow get back at Toto, which is now, well, not going to be the case, as we'll see in a second, especially when this is why Ben Sulayem gets a bit of a bad reputation, maybe a massively bad reputation, is comments such as this in the earlier this year, the Drive to Survive snippet that was spotted when during the cost cap saga last year, Ben Sulayem spoke to Horner and said, these guys all want your blood, you don't have any friends, I'm your only friends. Which is a strange thing to say as the president of the governing body, who's of course meant to be entirely impartial in all of this stuff. Horner was then very much like, I don't need your friendship. We're fine as it presently is. And then, of course, the prize-giving ceremony happened, and we'll discuss that in a second. That there was lots of friction there between Horner, between Ben Sulayem, and everything going on was, yeah, it wasn't pretty. Definitely some friction you could tell during that investigation and during that process. And, look, if, let's say, Horner and Ben Sulayem are trying to be a bit buddy-buddy, or Ben Sulayem feels like he's almost, leaning Horner's way on certain issues, then you can well imagine that Toto might not have been too happy about that, and potentially potentially that's why we're getting some of the friction that we are supposedly seeing go down behind the scenes at the moment. But, you know, let's say after all of the backlash from the teams, from Susie Wolff herself, from the Formula One group themselves, saying none of this is true at all, and it's, you know, incredibly intimidatory actions from the FIA. This was really just a massively open goal for the teams and for Formula One to score against the FIA in the power struggle, really, because after all of their responses and the community feeling, can Ben Sulayem and the FIA say, no, we're going to keep going with this, and we agree and what we believe that Toto should be fired, or Susie should be fired, or whatever. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere with that. It's not going to work, and if they try and push for that, the teams in Formula One are just going to leave. They're going to shut up shop and they're going to go and figure something out themselves. You know, the FIA FOCA war, and it's happened before. And, you know, now we're in a slightly different era, but nonetheless, it's still possible and the teams have looked into it. So with all this stuff happening, the FIA has, as expected, backed down from this. And they have said that its compliance investigation has ended. So either it took them 2 days to do their investigation, or what's far more likely is that they realised this ain't helping, you know, like they can't possibly take this anywhere anyway with the way things currently are. Formula One aren't going to listen. Mercedes aren't going to listen. It's only going to force Formula One away. So the FIA have been backed into the corner of saying, oh, sorry guys, our bad. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for the prize giving and we'll have a good time, right? It is satisfied that FOM's compliance management system is robust enough to prevent any unauthorized disclosure of confidential information. There is no ongoing investigation. So do you really think that they investigated this for about 48 hours and decided, yep, actually, from the information that we apparently now have that we didn't have 48 hours ago, it's all perfectly fine, no issues involved, let's just move on. I find it difficult to believe that's true. It's far more likely that they have been backed into a corner here to such a degree that they have to back down. Now, is this going to be the end of it? Because clearly F1 won this battle. F1 management won this battle over the FIA. Does that mean that the war is over? I would say no. Will Formula One be pushing the FIA, or even will the FIA internally be pushing to get rid of Ben Sulayem? Because clearly, as long as he's around, there's problems only just around the corner. So I don't know if Mohammed Ben Sulayem's position will last that much longer, if Formula One group themselves are still going to think about breaking away or whatever the case might be. But I guess we'll see tomorrow, because there's a prize giving ceremony going on again. Last year there was a bit of drama that was mentioned during the time, and Horner and Ben Sulayem and Verstappen are all going to be there and shaking hands and exchanging trophies and all this stuff, and it's definitely an interesting time for the prize giving ceremony to happen with everything else we have just discussed. Now, speaking of the FIA and other issues the teams have with the FIA with regard to other potential cheating accusations between Red Bull and AlphaTauri, or future potentially Racing Bulls, there's been lots of speculation, and I can understand it, as to, wow, AlphaTauri made some real steps at the end of this season. Was that anything to do with their ties to Red Bull? Now, sure, they can take some parts from Red Bull, as apparently they did at the end of the season. Apparently they were using the rear suspension that the Red Bull had. So that is obviously quite the advantage. But in addition to that, you've then got to think, well, what about next year? Do AlphaTauri get even closer to the Red Bull? And how do we ensure that there isn't any information sharing? So this has been actually raised by multiple parties, especially Red Bull's competitors, to say, hey, are we sure that everything is fine between Red Bull and AlphaTauri in terms of the rules? And clearly, as Nicholas Tombassis from the FIA says, that we check teams on this, and we check that they're independent to make sure this type of stuff doesn't happen. We've looked at AlphaTauri. They have quite different aerodynamic solutions to the other company. We don't think there's any sign of direct collaboration. They're working hard and have made a step forward, but I don't think it can be said that it's due to collaboration, which might be true in part for this most recent season, but if they take a big step forward next year, it's going to raise serious questions. So that's what's been discussed. Like, you know, some of the things, potential information sharing is clearly not legal. Whether AlphaTauri are doing any of that or Racing Bulls are doing any of that, of course, they might try and do what they can to share information between the two teams. They have to ensure the FIA that that's not going on, but can we trust them to do that? How difficult is it to actually police that? The answer is very difficult. And there was even a comment that went around, so I believe this was like an Autosport Plus article, but there was a quote in there from Zach Brown where he said, so of course CEO of McLaren, that we have big concerns over the alliance between AlphaTauri and Red Bull. So I think that the teams have been pushing on this, they've been pushing the FIA on this, and you can imagine Toto might have been pushing this as well, right? Which might be one of the other reasons why Ben Sulayem isn't so happy with with Toto and is trying to find ways to get back at him potentially with this investigation. So yeah, clearly the other teams are a bit concerned that the AlphaTauri Red Bull alliance is going to be quite significant, and there might even be doing things beyond what is allowed in the rules. Are the FIA appropriately positioned to police that? Well, that's another question in and of itself. Now, just wanted to mention quickly, this was back in the FISA FOCA War, 2010 roughly, the leaked provisional calendar, just to see what things looked like then compared to today, I suppose. I mean, like, this calendar makes a lot of sense, and also you've got to say, it doesn't just make sense because there aren't really too many street tracks, which I think is a positive, but also a lot of these are regionally grouped reasonably well, right? Again, not perfect, but I mean, look, you go Argentina, Mexico, Spain, Portugal, and then of course San Marino and Imola, Monaco, like reasonably enough. You go from Canada straight to the US Grand Prix, then back to Europe, you know, Finnish Grand Prix was proposed, and then Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Japan, and Australia to close out the season. That was a proposed provisional leaked 2010 calendar. The last time the governing body and Formula One were having a big spat, and it's now happening again, but we have a rather different calendar, especially with Madrid potentially arriving. This is another image of the track. Reportedly, it's going to be confirmed next week that in 2026, Madrid's going to be the Spanish Grand Prix. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I thought that Las Vegas wasn't going to be great when I initially saw the circuit, so maybe I should reserve judgment here. But for a few reasons, looking at the track, you could see, you know, why it might make some degree of sense. This track, to me, just seems like it's going to be what we thought Las Vegas might be. It'd just be absolutely terrible. I mean, and also, they want to do this as a night race, presumably to hide the fact that there's nothing going on around the track. Like, it's just an industrial park, and this is apparently what the track looks like. So I guess they will be going over the roundabouts as opposed to around the roundabouts, so like we saw the other day. But I mean, as I mentioned this track the other day, the lack of like strong braking zones and the reason why this would, I don't think, be good at all for racing. I think it would be an absolute shambles, to be honest. But they also want to do this as a night race. So well done, everyone. I mean, sure, the FIA is a clown show. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And for good reason, people are kind of taking the side of the teams and Formula One on this issue. But it doesn't mean that Formula One themselves don't have their own problems, because here we are again with another night race, and this would be the only European night race on the calendar. Another street track, another night race. You know, do we need it? No. Is it going to be fun? Probably not. But this is the type, you know, this is the world we live in nowadays. And Formula One, they want to think about the revenue, and Madrid can pay a lot of money. So it is what it is. A couple of other updates here before we close out the video. Firstly, from Audi. So there were some rumors going around a little while ago now that Audi had second thoughts on their Formula One project, and they might even pull out before 2026. So, of course, German guys here in the US have been looking into this and trying to figure out what is going on, and Audi will stick to their plan. So rumors about a sudden drop of the project that emerged after the new CEO took office in September have apparently now been denied. So Audi are all guns blazing, they're going in. Do wonder what that means for Sauber next year, right? Because Sauber are no longer going to be Alfa Romeo Sauber next season in 2024, but it's not going to be Audi until 2026. So will Audi have some sort of naming partnership before they officially become the Audi car with their own aero? I guess Sauber's going to kind of do that. And of course their own engine, which is the big story really with Audi coming in from 2026 with their new engine situation. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc will probably still be there at the time. Rumour is, as we said the other day, potentially a deal up to 2029 is plausible for Leclerc, a 3+2 year deal. So the first 3 years, no contract clauses. Now, contracts can be resolved or bought out or whatever. Like, let's say Ferrari is a shambles, Hamilton retires after the next season. Is it possible Leclerc goes to Mercedes? It's always possible. But, you know, if he does sign this new deal, that would be 3 years guaranteed at Ferrari, so that would take him until 2027. So he's got 2024 on the deal, then that's 5, 6, 7, and then another 2 years performance depending. So I guess if, you know, I guess it makes sense. Do 26, 27, see if Ferrari are good in those new regs, and then if they are, continue, and if they're not, don't continue. And it's also looking like there's rumours that Sainz is potentially going to get the 2-year deal that he wants. So his contract also is up at the end of 2024, but there was rumours that, well, you know, could they get Albon, could they get somebody else? But Santander, as you can see on the helmets here, they want Sainz to stay around, Spanish company. So the team apparently wants a 1-year deal. Sainz himself wants a 2-year extension. So maybe they're going going to compromise with, I don't know, less money, but you get a 2-year deal, stuff like that. And good driver pairing, I guess no reason to change it for the time being, but there are rumours that Leclerc will be even though they don't say this publicly, he will be the number one. His feedback will have the most weight. They will try and build the car for Leclerc, basically, is the rumour that's going around, which I think is pretty sensible, but I don't imagine Sainz is going to be too happy about that once he turns up at Bahrain next season, if they succeed on what they are apparently intending to do. And just one final thing, the FIA have also confirmed, lots of news from them today, that as we rumoured a couple of, maybe month or so ago now, that from the start of 2025, that's the only time the teams can work on the 2026 regulations. The intention here is, and I think the same thing happened before 2022 maybe as well, that let's say Red Bull have the best car next year, they have the best car in 2025, they could theoretically just not bother the entirety of 25 and just focus on 26. Or even they could stop focusing in 24 and just know that, well, 24 and 25's cars are going to be the same, so let's just focus on 26. Now, this is not going to be allowed. The teams have been told that it's only on the 1st of January 2025 the teams can start working on the new 2026 regulations, which I think is definitely a good idea on paper. The question again is, how do you really police this? How can you stop somebody doing a bit of work on the simulator or in, you know, some CFD testing before that date at the start of 2025, but on paper it does mean that it should reset the order. You know, if you're dominating 24-25, you can't just give up on those cars really early to actually start off the next set of regulations on the strongest foot. You have to start at the same time everybody else does. So in theory it works, but the reality is, can they enforce this? And who has that much confidence right now in the FIA to deliver on what it says it's going to deliver? But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Lots of new support over the last few days. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching as always. Take care and I'll see you next time.